Well, very happy Sunday to everybody out in the internet lands. And I just realized I didn't close my window because there is a noisy yard worker right outside. So I will do that in a moment. But before we do that, I want to welcome everybody to this final Sunday in September where we're talking about my service, which was in addition to, not instead of. JC wanted to go first because why break tradition? And JC, I promise you I will be able to hear you as I close my window.
I listened to Michael twice.
Yeah.
Once on my computer and once with Lillian. I have learned things, or I have found Michael's words and his points that he made have shifted have allowed me to shift my thinking into a way that is much wider. And I'm therefore almost awestruck because this big a shift doesn't happen very often. But I don't know if this has anything to do the way you think of it, Michael, but today I understand that all is energy.
Yeah.
And how I use that energy is probably how I deal with my soul.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm a little bit awestruck by the whole thing this morning. So
Wow.
listen.
Well, yeah, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Maybe it's like, but no, that's an enormous compliment, JC. But the truth is that when we look at a sermon or something that somebody's created, a piece of art or and we're able to get something out of it that the artist maybe didn't intend, or maybe intended subconsciously, or maybe, there's so many layers to the creative process that we just don't understand. That is equal, in my opinion. That realization or that interpretation is every bit equal in value to the original creation. So you are every bit as astute to be able to pull that kind of realization out of something that somebody said. Just because I'm curious, could you give an example of how that, like, if everything is energy and that dictates and you're thinking about how you spend that energy, could you give us an example?
Well, the quick and easy example is our belief that our spiritual life is based on deeds, not creeds.
Right.
So there are no creeds if the deeds don't make them live.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, the specific thing that happened was it had to do with a reading, Martha, that I think you did before, which was, do not come before God until you have done thus and such. Do not come before God. And that whole thing was just saying, bring your deed before God so that you have a connection to God. He's not there to help me, or it is there to be acknowledged. And I realized, okay, if I call God an energy, then I can be speaking with Kim, I can be speaking with Michael, I can be speaking with anybody, because we all know what that energy is about. It's everything you said about what's really important to us as human beings.
Right.
It's just that how you personify it makes a difference in how you relate to it.
Right.
And by getting the thing person idea out of the way, and that it is an energy that I can be in or be out of, now I can function toward what you were saying. Is there something about being truly human that has an energy we have not fully expressed yet, and it's there for us to express, and we will say, I never thought it was that.
Yes.
So I'm just like,
Yeah, yeah.
That's all of it.
And anytime I talk, JC, I want to take you with me.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and I think the reading that you're referring to was the Tagore poem of which we used for the meditation.
Yeah.
And it should be noted that Rabindranath Tagore, he did attend a Unitarian church in India, so there was some influence of Unitarian thought in his own philosophy. But what he had to say about, you do not go to your temple to fall down on your knees.
Yes.
And there's a lot you can read into that poem, but to me, you're right. It's what do we do with what we believe? How do our beliefs dictate our actions? Because I think, one of the things that you just said is that creeds without deeds is just posturing.
Yes, story.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is an incredibly succinct way of putting it. And I appreciate that. It's a very profound statement. Jesus said that that which you do to the least among you, you do unto me.
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
So these wisdoms are, I think, something that we have to remind ourselves of and keep reiterating every generation, because in the mundaneness of life, or in the hecticness of life, it's so easy to let those absolutely essential lessons pass us by. So thank you for all of that. That's you made my day. I think we can call it a day with JC's that. Go ahead, Lily.
I'd actually like to continue JC's comment, even though I did not know what her comment was going to be, rather than change the subject, which was a comment I would have made. And mine's more of a personal reaction that I want to share, because I think that when sermons touch us way down into our memories, it's important, to share that. And so, given what JC was saying about energy and about deeds and creeds, I immediately flashed upon how it was that I came to Umpqua Unitarian Universalist congregation and knew I was home. Just knew deep down that I was home. And why that is important to me is because I wasn't raised with religion, really. I spent a couple of years in the Jewish faith, because when my mother took us back to the Midwest where her family was, they were Jewish, and they said, got to get these kids in the synagogue and get, crazy ideas out of their heads. Well, my first 2 weeks in the synagogue, so I'm 7 years old, and the subject in children's religious education in the synagogue started with a joke, which you've probably heard me tell before, but the end result of it is, when you're trying to get admitted to heaven, St. Peter is going to ask, and what is it that you have done to deserve your entrance here? Which, for children is that whole concept of deeds, not creed. Anything you learn here, hopefully you will learn beyond just what it is, but learn to translate that into the work you do, the effort you put out, the way you treat other people, the way you live your life. So it was a really beautiful journey for me to just immediately flash back on that whole very early religious experience, even though I didn't stay in the faith. And even though, there was like 60 years or more, 70 years between that and finding my UU home, but knowing that this is where I really found my true spiritual home to be in. So thank you for letting me share that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it would be worthwhile, for the church. It's something that we talked about doing frequently and just never got around to doing it because it seems like there was always something to do that week. But testimonials, video testimonials from church members saying, this is why I love this place. This is why I come here. This is why I support it financially. This is why it's important to the community. I think all of those things are absolutely vital, especially in this new phase that the church is moving into. I think it's okay if we say that the church is looking for a minister, right? Is that okay? Yeah. So in this new phase that the church is going through of seeking spiritual leadership and spiritual direction, the process of like how I found this is just infinitely valuable, Aline. Real quick though, because you actually touched a little bit on a question that I had for the chat, and last week JC brought up that the example of Jesus, as a righteous human, as a compassionate person. And I think that to Christians, that's a vital part of the story, that this idea of gentle Jesus, meek and mild, right? But to me, what makes Christianity unique among the world's religions is the idea that everyone is redeemable, right? So even the worst among us can be forgiven and can be saved so long as we have a believing process. Now we could debate about the justice of simply of accepting belief, and then that maybe we might have a hard time believing, right? We might have a hard time believing that Jesus is God coming down from earth, dying for our sins, and that is what that's the process of salvation. But what do we think of the idea that you don't earn your way into heaven? That is just the belief. Yeah, go ahead.
We have just a little point to that.
Mhm.
Instead of talking about Christian churches, can we just talk about Jesus? Because if all Christian churches followed the teachings of
Sure.
Jesus,
Yeah.
really different experience.
But okay, let me simplify the question. How do we feel about the idea that salvation does not have to be earned? That salvation can happen through belief?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're all what was his name? The Universalist, the first guy, says everyone's going to be saved, but I say what from?
Yeah,
And
Right.
Is the value of a human dependent on their deeds, or is it just simply because they're human, with and without their imperfections? So there's a humanist point of view, right? So,
Right. Okay. Well, what's the answer to that question?
oh, I love asking questions and just dropping them.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to have a different answer. Everybody.
Well, right. And we're in a discussion for that reason.
But I'll quote Aleister Crowley. Every person is a star.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's literally true. Yeah.
That's it.
Don't you believe, believe, Larry?
That every person's a star.
Yeah, that's the whole quote.
Yeah.
It just says it all. We're all of value. Everything
Okay.
else is an illusion that we're placing on everything.
Right. Well, and of course, that's I think the whole purpose of our first principle, is that even, I don't know if I'm not comfortable using the word the worst, but I can't think of a better way to say it. So the worst among us still is a person of inherent worth and dignity.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Right. I mean, are there any exceptions to that?
My mother-in-law. Oh my goodness, my wife's here, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
Carol's not on it.
Yeah.
I love it. excited right now.
I'm gonna get it later.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're gonna if the camera goes black on Larry, then we know what happened.
he's at work.
All right, well, maybe we can come back to that as a question,
Hold on.
and yeah, go for it, Kim.
Well, whether we're saved or not, all I know is that regardless of what a person does, God still loves us all. And it doesn't matter if we've killed somebody as bad as that, or if we just cheated in school, or whatever little thing to huge thing you've done that's horrible. God still loves you. Whether you're saved or not, it's up to you. But God still loves us all.
So
Others do too.
Kim, what forms the basis of that belief? Is it simply a biblical thing, or is there something on top of that
Well,
that makes you believe that?
It's probably a biblical thing, but there's churches that think that God hates you because you sin.
Right.
But my church believes that God loves you no matter what you've done. He's a loving God. He made us in his own image, and he gave us freedom to choose, and because he doesn't want us boring as well. So one kid said, because he doesn't want us to be robots. I'm kind of laughing at that, but
Right.
he wants us to be the way we are, but we're living in sin, and so he still loves us all.
Yeah.
Where does being saved come into that? I mean, what is saved?
Is that a question for Kim?
Yeah, for
Okay.
Kim.
Well, when we're saved, when Jesus came on the cross and died for our sins, and before that, we were saved by we would do a lamb on the altar to forgive our sins. We were just talking about that at church yesterday. But we're saved by praying to God and asking for forgiveness. And Jesus came down on the cross and took our sins away. We still sin, but we have Jesus saving us. And I mean, I can go into it more, but
It's something I'm really trying to understand. It's just a term that I hear so much, being saved, and I'm trying to understand how, say, in my faith, where I've done wrong, or maybe I've done something really wrong, and I'm very regretful of that, and I ask forgiveness for that, and I commit to not doing that again. In my language, if I tried to use what I think is your word saved, I would say that I'm saved. I'm no longer in a state of disharmony because of this thing that I've done that was not a righteous and a good thing to do. Is that how you would think of the term, I've been saved? If somebody comes into your church and they're not saved and now they're saved, is that, I'm just trying to understand.
well, if you're come to our church, we wouldn't look at you as unsaved or saved, because we wouldn't judge you by what you've done. We leave that to God. So you would be talking to God through prayer, or however you want to do it, and ask him for forgiveness. So we don't look at each other as, oh, you're sinner. We're all sinners, but you're bad because you did that to your wife, or whatever it is. We don't look at anybody that way, or we
Sure.
shouldn't.
Well, that seems the same as what I'm saying. And yet, within some Christian religions, one has to say, I'm saved, or I've been saved. In other Christian religions, you don't. And yet the same process, I think, is happening, which would be maybe the same process for me as a Unitarian. It's just
That could be.
a lot. Maybe there's not a clear answer, but
Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
there, yeah, and there are so many Christian denominations with so many interpretations. What is the process of the salvation of the soul when it comes to the Catholic Church, for instance, is in some ways radically different than your Protestant Christian churches. Same thing with like the Episcopal to the Baptist to the evangelical community. All of these have different caveats for the salvation of the soul.
I will also say that some people feel it, like they really feel a blessing of something coming over them when they feel like they're really saved. I don't know. I've never experienced that myself personally, where I just have this overwhelming feelings.
Yeah.
Some people will get baptized to try to save themselves.
okay.
It's an interesting conversation. We might come back to it, but poor Joanne's been patiently waiting.
I'm a patient person. But
You are.
yes, my darling. You have to come home here on a bad day.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my take on this basically is I've done wrong. Do I go to confession as a Catholic? Or do I say to myself, because confession now in my life is not something I would do,
Mhm.
do I say, I forgive myself? And if somebody's looking at me, do they say, she's forgiven? The whole thought here is, yes, I am forgiven, whether it be myself or whether it be a deity, whoever it is. But I still believe that there are consequences. Are the consequences that I give the action? How do we resolve consequences?
Well, can you answer that?
Well, consequences of, I used to think hell and damnation.
Okay.
I'm going to hell, but since now I don't believe in hell, boy, this is another quandary. What it is actually is I think sometimes we make our own consequences and pay for them here on this earth.
Mhm.
I believe that sometimes consequences come from past lives and future lives. There's a lot to choose from, and are any of them wrong?
And that's probably a bigger question than we can answer in here. For the record, I wholeheartedly believe in hell. Hell is real. I've seen it. I've been there. And if anybody doubts that hell exists, you could buy a ticket to North Korea, and experience hell firsthand, I think.
But that's here on this plane right now that we're talking about. So we
Absolutely.
pay for our consequences at this time.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So here's a question for the group. In thinking about progress, right, and how we are progressing as a people and a society, and let's just stick with America, but we don't necessarily have to. What is it, if anything, that we ought to preserve as we move forward? Right? Is there anything from the past that maybe we've lost touch with, or that needs to be brought back, or something from the past that survived and deserves to continue to survive?
You mean like the Constitution?
I was thinking about things like tradition, but I'm afraid if we talk about the Constitution, it will veer into pure politicism. So, but thank you, Kim, for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
There,
Oh, yeah. How about Martha, then Anne Claire?
In thinking about all these things, and again, I concur with the ladies that your sermon was extremely thought-provoking.
Thank you.
I kept thinking about how life was before we were all delved into our electronics. And your graphic for this service sort of intimated that maybe was the nuts and bolts of what you were going to talk about, talking about a metaphor here. But I miss the days where people did entertainment in their living room with the piano and the singing,
Yeah.
and I remember doing all of that.
Mhm.
And I remember, yes, we had the television, but it wasn't the center of our universe. It wasn't on 24/7. We didn't carry around these little things in our pockets that tells us what to be doing. Of course, I'm the biggest victim of that. I escape into nature and my plants and outside. I think we've got too many people that don't know the nuts and bolts of how things work. I was looking at my grandson participating with his mom with a a box that they had invented, and they were making games out of this box. It was an Amazon box.
Mhm.
I'm hoping that lots of families are doing that, but you know what we're talking
Yeah.
about, going to every day, the stuff that's around the house, make something out of it, figure out how it's put together. You were talking about how you make music with the loops and the
Mhm.
this and
Right.
that's, and I understood all of that, and that's great. I think all the stuff that we have invented is wonderful, because I can look at my phone and I can say, hey, I want to listen to, and I hear it. That being said, when we use that whole medium and all of technology is our only way of being, I think a lot of things are missing. And that's, if that's what you're asking, what I would like to see happen, I would like to see more interactive, nuts and bolts, hands-on, because I'm concerned about how children's brains are being developed.
Yeah.
Children's brains, and there's fact now that little people can't function because they don't do, if it's not three-dimensional, they're not learning.
Mhm.
And there's all kinds of things, and I'm concerned for society, because when you fire somebody by tweet, it's not, you know, it's face to face is
Or-
still the best. Huh?
or by board email. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, I
No,
got all of that.
I know. It's a joke. It's a joke,
I
everybody.
know, I
Yeah.
understand totally.
No, but Martha, you make a good point, because for the record, everybody, when Martha's granddaughter would visit, we would sit in Martha's living room and play the piano and sing.
And
So yeah, so there's that.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about, this
Mhm.
interaction with people and spontaneous, and yeah, like she had a contest with my grandson in Seattle over who could do the floss better. But that
Oh, okay.
not, but they were still doing something. Do you know what I mean? I mean,
Yep.
it's the blending of saying, but when it's all, you don't do anything face to face. That's, and of course, where we're at as a society with, lots of things that aren't open, lots of, you can't go a lot of places. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well,
that's
and how many former educators do we have in this room? It's like,
Very-
yeah,
Quite a
right. Yeah, and it seems
I
like,
hope.
yeah, there's universal agreement that creative play is vital to children, and we're missing out on that. But also,
Mhm.
as an artist, I can tell you, gosh, one of the great joys in my teenage years was waiting until midnight for my favorite band to release their new CD and going home, and you listen to it beginning to end, and the experience of like reading the liner notes. And now, it's like, yeah, you want to listen to music, you just call it up on your phone. And I think the experience has been devalued. And what other experiences have been devalued because of the immediacy of our current culture? And Claire wanted to get in, and then, yeah, Lillian, I see you. Yeah.
My comment kind of weaves together both from where Joanne left off and Martha picked up too, and what I picked up in the sermon with relationship with connection to community and connection is what I wrote down.
Mhm.
And that is what we're missing. But as Martha was talking, I thought, wow, you know what? We've been warned. We were warned on Earth Day in 1970 or something, and look where we are now.
Yeah.
Because we didn't listen. George Orwell's 1984 came out when we were warned, and we're all walking around looking at those screens, you know. They don't even have to put them up as billboards. We put them in our own hands and walk around looking at them. We've been warned. You say you don't know where we're going. We've been told where it's going. You know, it's that single brain, and that's, I think, I don't know who said this sermon was thought provoking, but yes, that because of all of this. So yeah, the losing of the community is both, I think, exacerbated, of course, by COVID-19. So missing all of those things, like you may have had more opportunity to play cards with your grandchildren, which is what my children did with their grandparents. And it was wonderful. The visits were just a little more often. But I was watching reruns of some Saturday Night Live lately, and I had to laugh. A couple years ago, they did a Thanksgiving special, and Will Ferrell was the Indian chief, and he listens to the Fox, and got into it with the daughter who listens to the Peacock, gets all of her news from the Peacock. And I thought that really has separated us as much as the electronics, or has it the electronics just made it so we are out there with everything that separates us, you know?
Well,
I don't know. And we don't do our laundry at the river or at the laundromat.
Oh my gosh, I think, wait, was it you that said that before about laundry at the river? Okay. Yeah. It's more profound.
Shopping. Once again, it used to be the marketplace, then Safeway. Now we order it online. All these things that, yes.
Yeah, well, okay. So look at it this way, right? If you were in a town, say the size of Roseburg, how many people? Yeah, how many people in Roseburg say, believe that we ought to be successionalists? You know, they're secessionalists, right? That we should peacefully divorce as a country, that the states should just become these mini countries, and and so that we don't have to deal with people who don't think like us. Maybe one, maybe two, people in a large group. But those peoples would be ostracized to some degree. Given the internet culture, all of those people around the nation, right, can interact with each other. And now, in the Twitter universe and in, all sorts of other places online, it seems like that mentality gains traction. And now the latest poll comes out, and we've got 37% of the United States think that we need to break apart. It's just extraordinary to me. So
I'm hearing feedback, and
I know I'm trying to figure out where that feedback is coming from.
Right.
Yeah, sorry about that. Laleen, and then Larry, and I'm gonna turn this down.
You asked back a little bit ago what we miss most, and what it is that as society and our isolation has escalated and continued is most important, and that's very primary in my world right now. JC and I just booked a cruise. We booked a cruise for 2023. We booked a lesbian cruise that will probably have 1,800, maybe more, could be several thousand, who knows, participants. It's a celebration of 50 years of lesbian culture through Olivia and of cruises. The very first cruise was in 1987, and I was on that cruise, and it was every lesbian's best fantasy. Be floating on the water with nobody who's going to call you anything or object to you or anything. But I want to go back farther than that. I want to go back to pre-1970, for example, when we were homosexuals and we were queers. And then we were a gay community. And then we were a lesbian and gay community. And then we were an LGB community with bisexuals. And then we were an LGBT transgender community. And then we were an LGBTQ, meaning questioning, or QI, meaning intersex. And in a city like Los Angeles, we were a community as diverse as you can imagine, with every color, every religion, every ex-religion, you know, it didn't matter. You look at a gay pride parade and, you know, if there are 30,000 people that show up in a large city, you can see the diversity. So when I think about community and I think about my town here and how it was I could settle here, I moved in and I found organizations that were welcoming. And I got engaged and involved. One of them happened to be the Unitarian Church. But what I find now, and what pains my heart 12 years later, is that the community is so incredibly divided. And the thing that brought me back the most and was the most important was that for the first time in my life, when I lived here in 1979, I felt safe, really safe. If my car broke down on a country road and somebody in a big fat pickup pulled up behind me, I wasn't afraid I was going to be raped. I knew with good certainty that person, regardless, was probably going to help me either get my car going or take me home and do something about it the next day. And it didn't matter what the religion was. It didn't matter what the sex was. It was a community. And now I experience our community right here blowing itself apart. And it pains my heart so deeply. So when you got to that part, you know, of your sermon, Michael, where you said, you know, do we select people? Do they come into our lives for a reason or a season? Or do they come into our lives for purpose, not for purpose, but for life? Are they our friendships for life? And I thought about that and I said, well, what's the difference? And I said, well, those who stay are the relationships that are sacred and essential in our lives. They're tried and true and trusted, and they are the intimates within our larger and larger community. So in my world, there's my intimate friends, there's my Unitarian community, there's my larger community, and then there's my community. But I'm worried about my town community. And that's what I'm left with. And what I wanted to share from that gift that you gave us in just that one small part of the sermon, it was really, really significant and important.
Yeah.
Thank
Well, yeah, gosh, that again, you know, it's the biggest compliment in the world, Aline. You know, I share your concerns. I share your concerns because unfortunately, it's not just our Douglas County Roseburg community. Our trust in each other as a people seems to be dwindling day by day in our culture. And it's like, how in the world can we get that trust back? You know, I see a JC. I want to go Larry, and then JC can answer the question. So go ahead, Larry.
Oh my goodness, so much has gone.
Yeah, I know.
But I'll say something here. So our community, it's those damn Californians. So,
Wait a minute. Here I am.
No. I moved to Denver, and I was a carpet cleaner. I was cleaning carpets, and they would see my California license plate because I hadn't got my car re-registered, and they start getting mad at me. And to make things right with them, I would say, yes, I'm a Californian, and when we totally ruined this place, I'm going to move.
Right.
And I did. I moved here, and this is a wonderful place. And compared to California, Denver was safe. You could walk anywhere in any community and not feel like you're going to get mugged. Go to Watts and see what happens. I lived right next to Watts. But anyways, I don't know where. Oh yeah. What I was going to say like 5 conversations ago is that we have, I think, as far as choosing to do things a certain way, using electronics, I'm not saying that that's good or bad, but whatever we're doing with our interaction with each other and in the community, it's actually our choice. We can choose to interact any way we want. We're choosing to do it the way we're doing.
Mhm.
Well,
That's
see, we're
true.
having this nice conversation here on Sunday afternoon. This is a choice we're making. And it's helping to keep the community together. And this is one of the reasons I'm here, to support this. It's important that we talk as a community to keep these friendships alive. So
Indeed. And for the record, all transplanted Californians and Larry's mother-in-law are welcome at the UU Church. Thank you, Larry. Go ahead, JC.
Okay,
So how do we get a
this
trust back?
place that I empty, that I don't have the answer to this, and it came right out of your sermon,
Mhm.
where you talked about the artists and the musicians who used to have to build everything before they could even start,
Right.
and now they accept what has been built. What are the elements of human relationship that we used to have to build before we could start, and now we accept as just being? And what can we do? Because I can't answer that question.
Right. That
So-
is,
I think is
Yeah.
the question that you leave us with. Because and what I wrote down was, I've been willing to take it, okay, they're calling it love. I don't know what they mean, because it ain't what we meant last year for the up to now. It isn't what that means. There's something more about it that we might not call love, but that's what it is. It's a respect for the humanity of each of us. It's something, sounds kind of like the 7 principles. Oh, well, that might be helpful, and tell us what it is we need to use in doing this next level of whatever. I don't know what it is, but this place where we live really needs us to figure that out, because it's not going to be based on what anybody used to believe or anything else. It's based on something we don't honor yet. And that leads me to the next little thing that I've been looking up in my thesaurus while we've been talking. If God is an energy in my thinking, then how do I say God bless? Okay, I think these 2 things that I just said bear on each other. I think when we say God bless is something about justifying or sanctifying yourself. When you ended your sermon with God bless.
I did.
You were showering everything that would sustain and justify and us that you could imagine, and things that you couldn't, because you used the word God.
Mhm.
So I think if we could become aware of what are the paints and notes and whistles of art and music, of human relationships.
Yeah.
We'd be getting there somewhere.
Well, that again, that is a deeply profound thought. When you were talking about human relationships, the most immediate thing that I thought of is like dating applications, right? That in the past, if we wanted to form romantic relationships, there was a process, and sometimes a very lengthy process
That's
to
right.
that. Dating, but we don't even have to talk about dating. We can talk about friendships, the way that social media is kind of like a shortcut, because you can learn all about somebody by looking at their Facebook profile. Now, the truth is you don't really learn all about them, but you learn a lot of the facts that would have come out in engaging conversation. But there's so much in that engaging conversation that you learn outside of just the facts, right? It's the way that those facts are delivered, and the passion, and and the way that you can relate to it. There's just so much to it, and we've created these shortcuts to human relationships, which is not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but this is, JC, it's the heart of what I was trying to say, is that we can have social media, we can have Facebook and learn about each other online, but let's try and hold on to that process that was so beautiful in the past, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and that's what Martha was talking about, right?
Yes,
Yep.
yes, indeed.
Face-to-face learning. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Martha.
I look at life as a number line. When you're trying to explain something to someone about shades, I was having a conversation with the before mentioned granddaughter yesterday, and she was going from 0 to 180, and I said, think of everything as a number line. You have to be somewhere, and maybe you move up like 0.25, and maybe then you move back, but there are layers of things that have to happen. And just because someone says they're number 10, well, they haven't done 7, 8, 9, and whatever. There are all these things that need to be filled in. And I think that's what we're missing, is all these pieces. I mean, I know, because you can tell I'm used to working with special needs kids, because I tried to put everything on a number line because they could relate to that when it came to even thoughts. So I'm going to start on my number line.
Well, yeah, and you kind of have to meet them where they're at.
That's right.
That's something that you learn in working with children.
Oh, with adults, you have to do
well,
that.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
You have to do that with any relationship that you encounter. And I think what we do is, when we're doing all this quote unquote, I want to say artificial, that's not what I mean, but you're doing technology, that's not the dimension that you need to be in to really get to know somebody.
Right.
I mean, all
agree.
those subtleties of sitting across from somebody having coffee or something.
Yes.
There are subtleties to everything, and you don't see that when you're just,
Yeah. Great. How about Kim, then Larry?
Well, when listening to your sermon, I just got a bunch of questions that I think people should ponder about. Like, how can you have a relationship when we're stuck in our homes all the time?
Yep.
Like this.
How can you have a community when you're not together? Because you're saying we need to have community. Well, I'm thinking, well, we're stuck in our house most of the time. How can we do that? Okay. So what are you sacrificing when you're being together and you don't agree with each other? Do you sacrifice a friendship because you don't agree with each other? Like my aunt had a friend who she's known for years and years and years, took her off their Facebook page and said she doesn't want to talk to her anymore, simply because my aunt's not been vaccinated. Now, my aunt said she didn't get into any conversations with this friend about it. This friend was doing all the talking and my aunt just simply said, okay, I'll think about it. But she's not vaccinated. And this friend doesn't want to talk to her anymore because she's not vaccinated. That's the only reason why she's not talking to her. Is that what we're down to?
Right. And again, these are things that would take to flesh out the nuances and the subtleties of that kind of conversation would take a long time.
Well, it's things that you should ponder about.
I think it's worth the conversation is worthwhile, you
Yeah.
know, and I think, you know, gosh, if we were doing AEO or something like that, that would be a really interesting discussion to have. But yeah, no, you're right, Kim, and those things are on my mind, if not hourly, daily, you know.
Yeah.
So
And
I hear you.
I'm in a position where I could possibly lose my job because I'm choosing not to do something.
Right.
And is that fair? It's not fair, because you should be able to choose regardless of what it is.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and thank you for sharing that. We're at the final stretch. Larry.
But I'm gonna skip out because
Oh,
I can't remember where it was good. But it's not good anymore, so forget it.
I
Next
have
week,
to
I'll
write it
remember
down.
it. In the middle of the night, I'll wake up and I go, oh, that, and I'll write it down. Okay.
Yeah. What other group were you going to complain about, Larry? No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
Okay, well, comment on that thing. I like it. I don't see any harm in disagreeing with people, and it never bothers me. That's just me. And I think it's healthy to get it all out on the table and discuss. And you know what happens when you put it on the table? A lot of times people find out how silly their point of view actually was,
Right.
or they find out how interesting and valuable the other person's point of view was. When people, and you know, if you understand someone, you have a better chance of getting along. And actually, anyways, that's just me. But
Yeah.
if we don't, we can be here. I came from the Unity Church. So there's two ways of having Unity Church. One is unity and diversity. Everyone can believe something different, but they can come together and be unified. And the other one is unity and conformity. We're in unity as long as you believe what I believe. And that's impossible. This is never going to happen. Anyways, I'm out.
No, it's good. It's a very good thought. Yeah, and this has been a great conversation, and I really appreciate everybody contributing, and especially everybody listening, because you are why we do what we do. If the chat can indulge me for a minute or two, one of my favorite movies growing up was Dune, the adaptation of the Frank Herbert book. Now, I don't know if this line exists in the novel, but as a impressionable young mind, I heard the actor say to his son, "What change is necessary, that it awakens. Without change, we sleep and we rarely waken to the reality that could be, and that the sleepers have to awaken, and an embrace of change." And I have so enjoyed my time serving as the music director, occasional speaker, and later on media person for the UU Church. It's been a place where I was allowed to experiment with music and thoughts, having students perform. It has been a place of immense and infinite growth for me. I dare say I would not be who I am without the past decade at the UU Church. But that being said, change is necessary. And I find myself needing new adventures and new opportunities. So this was actually my final sermon and my final discussion. And I wish nothing but the best for the church moving forward, especially with the new phase of the church's existence. And thank you very much for the opportunity to do all of this stuff. I will miss you, and I will miss this. So.
Thank you, Michael.
So best of luck to everybody. Take good care, and God bless you. Have a wonderful week.